Hello and welcome to Top 20 Hardest Sports on Earth. Are you tough enough? A question I ask myself every morning while wrestling with the existential dread of my inbox. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, you spend most of your time behind a desk, occasionally venturing out to poke fun at pigeons wearing hats. What makes you an authority on physical exertion? And to that I say, fair point. But just because I choose to spend my days in a climate-controlled environment, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the crushing weight of global despair, doesn't mean I can't appreciate the sheer athleticism on display in the world of sport. We're talking about the kind of dedication that would make a honey badger say, okay, maybe take a day off. The kind of physical prowess that could make even the most ardent armchair athlete question their life choices. We're going to delve into the blood, sweat, and frankly concerning number of tears it takes to reach the pinnacle of athletic achievement. Over the next 20 entries, we'll be ranking the most demanding sports on the planet, from the relatively straightforward, like running really fast, to the downright baffling, like chasing a cheese down a hill. Get ready for a wild ride through the world of broken bones, shattered dreams, and enough lactic acid to dissolve a small yacht. Buckle up, Buttercup, because things are about to get sweaty. Kicking off our list at number 2, we have Gymnastics, a delicate ballet on a jungle gym designed by Satan himself. These athletes are tougher than a week-old baguette, contorting their bodies into shapes that would make a yoga instructor weep. The sheer strength required is immense. Have you ever tried to hold yourself horizontal on the uneven bars? These athletes defy gravity and common sense with every twist, flip, and dismount, and they make it look effortless. Behind those dazzling routines lies a grueling training regimen. Hours of practice pushing their bodies to the limit. Gymnasts are giants in the world of athleticism. Coming in at a very deserving number 2 on our list, we have boxing, a sport that's less about dancing around a ring and more about turning your opponent's face into a Picasso painting. It's a delicate dance of strategy, timing, and knowing exactly when to unleash a right hook. Boxing requires an almost superhuman level of fitness. These are athletes who train like they're preparing for the apocalypse. Boxing isn't just about physical strength. It's about outsmarting your opponent. Every time you step into the ring, you're putting your health on the line. So the next time you see two boxers squaring off, remember that you're witnessing the culmination of years of dedication and grit. Alright, coming in at number 3, we have rugby. Isn't that just a bunch of lads running around with a funny-shaped ball? It's 80 minutes of pure, unadulterated brutality disguised as a sport. They sprint, they tackle, they wrestle, and they do it all with minimal padding. Rugby players laugh in the face of such luxuries. Amidst all the bone-crunching hits, there's a surprising amount of strategy involved. At number 4, we have ice hockey. Hockey is the national sport of Canada. This sport is anything but polite. Imagine strapping knives to your feet and chasing a frozen puck. That's hockey in a nutshell. These athletes are like graceful gazelles with razor-sharp blades. And speaking of checking, let's not forget the fighting. Yes, you heard that right. The crowd goes absolutely wild for it. Coming in at number 5, we have the sport that unites and divides billions around the globe, soccer, or as the rest of the world calls it, football. Soccer is a game of endurance, skill, and, dare I say, a touch of the dramatic arts. Their ability to fake injuries? Meryl Streep could take notes, and yet they perform at an elite level week after week. Wrestling. The sport of glistening spandex-clad humans engaging in what appears to be a very intense cuddle puddle. Muscles on muscles grappling for dominance. It's not just brute force. You need the technique of a chess grandmaster. Wrestling is as much a mental battle as it is physical. It's a demanding, technical, and utterly exhausting sport. Mixed martial arts, or MMA, is essentially the love child of every action movie fight scene ever made. It's a glorious, chaotic blend of disciplines, where karate chops meet takedowns and jiu-jitsu submissions. Imagine a blender filled with every fighting style imaginable. That's MMA in a nutshell. Now you might think, isn't it just two people punching each other in a cage? And to that I say, partially, yes, but with more rules than you might expect. But beyond the punches, kicks, and the occasional flying knee lies a level of skill and athleticism that's frankly terrifying. These athletes train in everything from boxing to Muay Thai to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, making them walking, talking Swiss Army knives of combat. The training regime alone is enough to make mere mortals weep. We're talking hours of sparring, conditioning that would make an Olympian sweat, and the constant threat of accidentally being put in a chokehold by your training partner. It takes a special kind of dedication, some might even say madness, to willingly step into that octagon. But hey, at least the outfits are comfy. Well, as comfy as tiny shorts and mouth guards can be while someone's trying to rearrange your facial features. MMA is a sport that demands respect, even if it occasionally looks like two angry octopuses fighting over a particularly delicious clam. Water polo. On the surface, it looks like a leisurely game of catch gone wrong. But beneath the splashing and flailing limbs lies a sport so demanding, so brutal, that it makes synchronized swimming look like a relaxing dip in a wave pool. Imagine trying to tread water for an hour. Now imagine doing that while being aggressively splashed, kicked, and dunked by 7 other people who are also trying to score goals. Oh, and did I mention you can't touch the bottom? Because that would be far too sensible for the watery thunderdome that is water polo. It requires the lung capacity of a free-diving champion, the upper body strength of a particularly ripped octopus, and the pain tolerance of, well, someone who enjoys being kicked in the face repeatedly. Because, let's be honest, accidents happen, especially when you're essentially playing rugby in a swimming pool. But amidst the chaos, there's a surprising amount of strategy involved. Think of it as chess, but with more chlorine and the constant threat of drowning. Teams have to work together, passing the ball with laser-like precision, while simultaneously trying to avoid being pulled underwater by their opponents. It's a delicate balance of aggression, athleticism, and the ability to hold your breath for a really, really long time. Alright, strap on your helmets, folks, because we're diving into the gladiator pit that is American football. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, Isn't this just a bunch of lads in padding running into each other? And to that I say, well, yes, but it's so much more nuanced than that. Imagine, if you will, a chess match played on a muddy field, where the chess pieces are 300-pound behemoths fueled by protein shakes and existential rage. Every single play in this sport is a carefully choreographed ballet of brute force and tactical maneuvering. You've got your quarterbacks, those fragile geniuses throwing tight spirals, while linebackers, the size of refrigerators, try to turn them into a human accordion. You've got running backs, built like tanks, dodging and weaving through a sea of testosterone-fueled chaos. And let's not forget the offensive line, those unsung heroes whose job it is to stand their ground against an oncoming stampede. And all this while trying to remember hundreds of plays, decipher the opposing team's strategy, and avoid getting a concussion? Honestly, it's a miracle these guys can remember their own names after a game, let alone which way is up. It's a brutal, physically demanding sport, and frankly, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. But hey, at least they get to wear helmets. Well, most of the time. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tennis. The sport of polite applause and questionable fashion choices. Trust me, my friends, there's a reason why this made the list. Because beneath the pristine white attire and the strawberries and cream lies a game of incredible athleticism, mental fortitude, and frankly, a surprising amount of grunting. See, a top-tier tennis match is essentially a marathon disguised as a sprint. You've got these athletes, often in sweltering heat, covering the court with the grace of gazelles and the lung capacity of a small opera singer. They're chasing down shots, hitting winners from impossible angles, and engaging in rallies that could outlast a filibuster in the US Senate. And it's not just about physical strength, oh no. Tennis requires laser-like focus, the ability to maintain composure under immense pressure, and the strategic mind of a chess grandmaster. Because every serve, every volley, every grunt-inducing return is a calculated move in a high-stakes game of mental warfare. So the next time you find yourself sipping Pimm's and watching Wimbledon, remember this: beneath those polite smiles lies a warrior spirit, and a whole lot of sweat, and probably some chafing. Alright, let's talk about Alpine skiing, shall we? The sport where you strap 2 planks of wood to your feet and hurl yourself down a mountain. It's a thrilling display of human audacity and a blatant disregard for self-preservation. Imagine standing at the top, wind whipping at your face, staring down a sheet of ice. Your heart is pounding, your legs burning, and you haven't even started yet. With a deep breath, you push off, becoming a human projectile. It's not just about speed. You must navigate gates and carve perfect turns. Just remember to wear a helmet, alright? Ah, rowing. The sport of grunting, grimacing, and gliding gracefully across the water, preferably backwards. Now you might think, John, isn't rowing just a bunch of attractive people in neat little boats pulling on oars? And to that I say, have you ever seen a rower's hands? They're like catcher's mitts, only instead of catching baseballs, they catch monstrous calluses the size of small rodents. Rowing demands the kind of endurance that would make a marathon runner say, "Okay, that's a bit much, even for me." These athletes are essentially human winches, pulling with every muscle in their body, stroke after agonizing stroke. And let's not forget the mental fortitude required. Imagine staring at the back of someone's sweaty head for hours on end, all while pushing your body to its absolute limit. You'd need the mental resilience of a Buddhist monk who moonlights as a Navy SEAL. But it's not just about brute strength and mental toughness. Rowing is also a deeply technical sport, requiring perfect synchronization and timing. One wrong move, one misplaced oar, one ill-timed grunt, and the whole boat can go off course, ruining hours of excruciating effort. It's like trying to conduct an orchestra of drunken chimpanzees, except the chimpanzees are your own muscles screaming for mercy. So the next time you see a rowing race, don't just admire the picturesque scenery or the perfectly synchronized movements. Remember the sheer physical and mental torture these athletes endure. And then maybe, just maybe, consider taking up a slightly less demanding hobby, like competitive thumb wrestling or extreme ironing. Cycling. It's like riding a bike, but if that bike was possessed by a vengeful spirit of a fit hamster. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, cycling? Really? Don't those guys just wear spandex and shave their legs? Cycling is not for the faint of heart or the weak of quadriceps. These athletes spend hours in the saddle, battling the elements and the terrain. Cycling is a game of chess on wheels, with riders constantly jockeying for position. So, the next time you see a group of cyclists whizzing by, spare a thought for the pain they're enduring. In basketball, a sport so ubiquitous, so ingrained in our collective consciousness, that we often forget just how demanding it is. You might think, basketball? Just tall people chucking a ball through a hoop? But have you ever tried it while being chased by a giant who moves like a gazelle on roller skates? Basketball demands athleticism, skill, and mental toughness. They jump like they've got springs, run like they're chased by squirrels, and shoot with precision. It's also a cerebral game, requiring split-second decisions and strategic thinking. So, next time you watch, remember the athleticism, mental fortitude, and tactical brilliance. At number 15, we have lacrosse, a sport often associated with preppy private schools and questionable fashion choices. But don't let the popped collars and pastel shorts fool you, because underneath all that is a sport demanding a brutal combination of speed, skill, and physicality. Imagine trying to run at full tilt while simultaneously wielding a stick with a net on the end, trying to catch, carry, and throw a solid rubber ball at speeds that would make a tennis player weep. And did I mention the physicality? Because lacrosse players aren't afraid to get up close and personal. It's like a rugby scrum, but with less groping and more whacking each other with sticks. They call it checking, which sounds almost polite, like asking someone to check their privilege when they complain about the weather. But trust me, getting body checked by a lacrosse player is about as pleasant as getting a root canal from a badger. But the real kicker is that they do all this while running around a field that's longer than a football field. It's a recipe for exhaustion, bruises, and the occasional concussion. So the next time you see a bunch of lacrosse players running around, don't just assume they're all trust fund kids with something to prove. They might actually be incredibly tough athletes who just happen to enjoy a good pastel polo shirt. At number 16, we have surfing, a sport that looks deceptively chill. I mean, you're just gliding on water, right? Well, yes and no. Yes, you're gliding on water, but that water can be a tempestuous beast, tossing you around like a rag doll in a washing machine. And you're not just gliding, you're battling powerful waves, trying to maintain your balance on a piece of fiberglass while simultaneously maneuvering it with the grace of a ballerina and the strength of a strongman. And let's not forget the ever-present threat of getting absolutely pummeled by those waves. We're talking about tons of water crashing down on you, holding you under, tossing you around like a rogue salad spinner. It takes incredible lung capacity, serious upper body strength, and a certain level of comfort with being at the mercy of nature's whims. Oh, and did I mention the sharks? Because you know they live in the ocean, and while attacks are rare, the possibility of encountering one of those toothy fellas adds a certain frisson of danger to the whole endeavor. So, the next time you see a surfer effortlessly carving up a wave, remember, they're not just enjoying a relaxing day at the beach. They're engaged in a delicate dance with power, grace, and the very real possibility of a face-to-face with Jaws. And at number 17, we have Equestrian. Now, I know what you're thinking. Equestrian? Really? The sport where you just sit on a horse and look fancy? Well, hold your horses, because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. First of all, you're not just sitting there like a sack of potatoes. You're trying to control a 1,000-pound animal with a mind of its own, using subtle cues and a surprising amount of core strength. Imagine trying to do yoga while riding a roller coaster, and you're getting close to the sheer athleticism required for equestrian sports. And let's not forget the mental toughness. These horses can be temperamental creatures, prone to spooking at the slightest provocation, like a rogue plastic bag or an unexpected sneeze. And if you think staying on a bucking bronco is easy, well, then you've clearly never tried to stay on a bucking bronco. Equestrian athletes train for years to develop the balance, coordination, and communication skills needed to succeed. They form incredible bonds with their equine partners, working together to navigate complex courses and perform demanding maneuvers. So, before you dismiss equestrian as just sitting on a horse, remember there's a reason why it's an Olympic sport. And it's not just because the horses look fabulous in those tiny hats. Right, number 18, triathlon. This is 3 sports strung together by sadists. Swimming, cycling, and running back to back to back. Changing clothes between events does not count as a break. Real triathlons make marathons look like a light jog. Olympic distances involve a 1.5-kilometer swim, 40-kilometer bike ride, and 10-kilometer run. It's not just physical strain. Triathlons demand mental resilience. To those who compete, you have my deepest respect. Right, cricket. You might think it's just people standing around in funny white outfits, But to dismiss cricket as not a sport is like saying the Queen is just a sweet old lady. This sport is a marathon disguised as a tea party. There are more ways to get out in cricket than at a royal garden party. They're sprinting, catching, and enduring the sun, all while wearing enough wool to knit a village. Baseball, the supposed national pastime of the United States. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, the seventh inning stretch. It's wholesome, nostalgic, and deceptively difficult. Hand-eye coordination that borders on the superhuman. Hitting a round ball with a round bat at incredible speeds. And let's not forget the pitching. Projectiles with names like slider and curveball, precision and swagger. Baseball is as much about strategy as it is about skill, split-second decisions and focus, agonizing defeats and exhilarating victories. Well, folks, there you have it. The top 20 hardest sports on Earth. From the explosive power of boxing to the strategic brilliance of cricket, the sheer athleticism on display is enough to make even the most dedicated couch potato feel a little bit inadequate. But that's the beauty of sports, isn't it? They push us to our limits, physically and mentally, and remind us that even in a world obsessed with instant gratification, true mastery takes time, dedication, and a whole lot of sweat. So, which sport do you think reigns supreme in the difficulty Olympics? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, whether you're a seasoned athlete or just a casual observer, there's always something to appreciate in the dedication, skill, and sheer bloody-mindedness it takes to compete at the highest level.